Mr. President, I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your appointment, and I look forward to the very spirited discussions that we will have in this Honorable House. I also want to take this opportunity to again thank the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, for placing again his trust and confidence in me to now serve as a government senator. I also wish to welcome our new senators, persons with experience, especially in the lower house, Senator Reynolds, persons who are experienced educators like Dr. Antoine, and persons who are, well, a young lady who has joined our team, Senator Tousse, who has the experience in the fisheries sector that we, prior to this sitting, did not have. So I want to take this opportunity to again welcome them, and also to the new independent senators. Mr. President, the fact that we now have 4 women on the governing side is admirable. It says to me, as a young woman, that this St. Lucia Labour Party government is indeed making strides towards inclusivity and equality. And because we have strength in the women on this side, I want to also, through you, Mr. President, make an appeal to the gentlemen who are here, that it is not only the responsibility of the ladies to advocate for the rights of women and girls, but it is all of our responsibility. And I wish, if you permit me, to just make mention of the fact that I listened to a show by Mr. Calix George, where the gentleman was saying that they don't really hear the voices of the women and them advocating in politics. But again, I just want to tell our St. Lucian brothers, uncles, fathers, that it is all of our responsibility. And it is ironic that we are here and, persons on the other side, the senators on the other side are taking credit for bills brought into this House, but we still have the Justice Bill for women and girls that in their time was brought, taking over a year and a half for consultation, and was still not brought into this Honorable House. But fortunately, our government is a government of inclusivity and believes in the protection and rights of our women and girls, and we will soon, at some point, when it is necessary, that this bill be brought into this House. So, Mr. President, moving my focus straight into the amendments, I just want to remind St. Lucians that this is not a new COVID-19 bill. This is simply amendments to the bill that exists. And I just want to highlight a few amendments that are brought before us today, which I think is, again, very admirable. And I listened to the contributions of the independent senators who advocated for the inclusion of the private sector being part of the discussion, especially as this sector experienced a tremendous blow due to COVID-19. So the fact that we again have the Medical and Dental Association, the Trade Union Federation, the SLHT representation on this new COVID-19 Management Center shows that this government indeed appreciates and will continue to include the private sector in consultation. But for me as a young person, I was tremendously impressed and happy to see that finally young people have a voice. And the government of St. Lucia has decided that we will include a representative of the National Youth Council to speak on the issues that affect the majority of our population, and that is young people. If we paid attention to the sitting of the lower house, we would have learned that the majority of persons who are impacted by this deadly virus range from the age of 25 to about 40. And that is our young people. So now we have a representative, where we did not see so in the previous composition of the command center at the time, but we see the inclusivity brought in here by this government. Now, Mr. President, it is ironic that members of the opposition seem to have selective amnesia on how COVID-19 is being managed by this government, or was managed by them. We heard of the request to close down bars or to hold back liquor licenses. But we also saw that the same members who are advocating for that were indeed part of Mr. President, I did not really want to go down that road, but because of this selective amnesia, I need to remind the people of St. Lucia that it was these same members of the previous administration who were caught on camera, video images circulating all over social media in the same bars, campaigning without a mask. And we want to talk about the spread and management of COVID-19. We are also hearing of a request to shut down the country. At the time that the St. Lucia Labour Party advocated for closing down the borders, it was because nobody in St. Lucia had a complete understanding or grasp of how the government at the time was managing COVID-19. There was absolutely little to no contact tracing done. When we made the request for second testing, we were being mocked and say, oh, y'all want to do like Barbados. But we asked for it, Mr. Speaker, and because all of those things were not in place, we had to say that maybe the only alternative that we are being left with is to close down the borders. At this time, Mr. Speaker, 5 weeks in government, we have had just a basic assessment of the finances of this country. And to tell you the truth, based on what has been reported by the members of cabinet and the members of the lower house, we have little to nothing left. So imagine, imagine $500 million, Mr. President, $500 million with a capital B, was borrowed in the name of COVID in this House by the previous administration. They could have only accounted for about $7 million US of that. Where did the rest of the money go? I asked the question then, and I need to ask the question now. But now that we're in government, we will surely find out where it went. Because earlier the leader of government business spoke about the 7 million of vaccines that were being purchased, and now we are still in a position where we need to try to recoup that money. So judging from the fiscal space, the lack of fiscal space that we have...
Mr. President, I rise on a point of elucidation. I'm ever so sorry.
Okay, just give me a minute. I'm about to just finish that point. So, Mr. President, as I was saying, because of the lack of... Not at this point, Mr. President. Because of the lack of
the
fiscal...
point of elucidation.
Right?
Right.
No, I'm just trying to ask her to clarify the numbers.
She is saying not at this time.
Okay.
We'll
get to that. So yes, Mr. President, as I was saying, because of the lack of fiscal space that we have, I remember that in January of this year, the former Prime Minister came and spoke of additional COVID relief and COVID support in his prime ministerial address to the nation. It came up to April, May, and absolutely nothing was done because he also admitted that the country was broke and the country had no money. Then I remember a previous sitting of the Senate where I came and I asked, Mr. President, what happened to the wardens? The minister at the time, who was the Minister of Health, stood up and said, well, we don't have money to pay the wardens. So if we did not have money then, and we have not come to borrow money now, it simply means that we are in the same position that we were in a couple weeks before the election, Mr. President. So because of this lack of fiscal space, closing down the country at this point, we need to look for the finances to be able to support our people. Gradually, this government has been making strides in terms of how we can provide some relief. So we looked at the income tax amendment. We look at various amendments that have been coming to the House. Also, the
Mr. President, I rise in the point of order. I'm ever so sorry. I'm ever so sorry, Mr. President, for interrupting the senator, but the senator is clearly misleading the House.
Can you lead us to the area of your contention as far as what the...
She's misleading the House.
What is... Excuse me, Senator.
Mike. Yes.
When you say that the member is misleading the House, what part of what she said?
So there's one...
May I finish, please,
yes,
Senator?
Go right ahead.
When you say that the senator is misleading the House, could you point us to what she has said, or the area of her presentation or her speech, that in your opinion is misleading.
So, Mr. President, sorry, if you'd allow me, I shall explain. So there's one thing, Mr. President, to suggest that the Treasury is empty. And we appreciate that point, because we've been saying that now since the pandemic began. We lost 250 million in revenue. We've said so, and we've stated that. But why it has become necessary is that the opposition, while in opposition, kept saying that that was not true. And they insisted, Mr. President, that there were monies available, and those monies available, Mr. President, were available to give everyone 1,005, and they had enough fiscal space. It's knowing all of these figures. The Social Economic Review is a book that every single parliamentarian come in and we debate, and in these Social Economic Review, they have a set of information on the fiscal position of the government. The estimates of revenues and expenditures also did so. In the year 2021 to 2022, we outlined that there was a big gap in the fiscal position of the country. So there was a major deficit. We indicated all of that. And so therefore, to say now that you're going to come to assess, I think that you had the chance to assess, but you chose instead to mislead the people of St. Lucia by promising them that you had the fiscal space to reduce the income tax bill by raising the threshold to $48,000, giving everyone a $4,000 increase. And so that is the misleading. The principle is misleading to say now that you are now trying to assess because you are now coming and you're now seeing what the figures are. The figures were made public a long time ago for all of you to see. The leader of government business has been in the Senate. The senator that is now on her feet has been in the Senate. And these documents have been made available to all of them. So basically, your party knew the fiscal position of the country, but you chose to play as if you didn't know.
Continue, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's one thing if I said it, but I wasn't the one who said it. The former Prime Minister of St. Lucia was the one who came to the House and said that the country is broke. So I will move on, Mr. President. Like I was saying, because of the poor management of COVID and the lack of transparency of the previous government, if the numbers were brought before us, St. Lucia would have a better understanding of how things were. But 500 million borrowed in the name of COVID and only 20 million to account for. We have to ask these questions. So, anyways, Mr. President,
could you allow, please?
Again, I wasn't the one who said it. So moving forward, Mr. President.
Senator Fede, the member has the right to speak uninterrupted. I so advise you to allow her to, please.
Moving forward, Mr. President, at the time of the previous administration, and we saw it on social media, the COVID wardens, the way that the excessive force was being used on our people, and the reception of the St. Lucian public. The people were not happy, they were very disgruntled, and they felt like they were being ruled with an iron fist. This St. Lucia Labour Party government is saying we are not here to rule with an iron fist, but we are here to work together with the people of St. Lucia. And of course, every single decision that has come to this House has been backed by, yes, the science. Over and over again, we have been advocating, we've been pleading that the basic ways that we can all prevent the spread of this deadly virus is to follow the science, wear your mask, sanitize, wash your hands, practice social distancing, and of course get vaccinated. Now, as a result of what we are seeing today, where we are experiencing a further spike in COVID, the government has decided to take a bit more sterner measures. And that is why we are seeing the implementation or the recommendation to implement the ticketing system. Now, Mr. President, you would see that even if when the COVID wardens were being used, there was a lot of direct contact with the people. There was a lot of physical contact. Even masks being falling apart and people's clothing being rumpled up and being torn. We are really just trying to avoid all of that as best as we can and pleading to St. Lucians that this is another measure that we are about to put in place. Now everybody is asking, why are we going in the direction of the ticketing system? This will allow for less contact by a police officer with a citizen. And you would realize, or if you were paying attention, that some of the police stations in the past had to be temporarily closed due to COVID-19 outbreaks. Now, if we do not have our police officers, Mr. Speaker, how are we going to get the support to enforce the law? So we need to take care of our police officers, and that's why this ticketing system, a very simple system, which has been used in the past with controlling measures of the transportation sector, is a simple measure that we are using in this case, without saying to St. Lucia that we are going to rule with an iron fist or we are going to arrest you. Look at the number of persons with criminal records in St. Lucia who cannot even apply for jobs. They cannot even travel because what is required, especially if they need to get a US visa, for example, they need to present their criminal records. So the St. Lucia Labour Party is saying, let us see how best we can avoid all of that by working with the people of St. Lucia so we can make things a bit easier. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, my apologies, the reason why this ticketing system is being implemented is for us to have a better handle on how things are being managed. I'm not saying that we have it all figured out, that the St. Lucia Labour Party government has it all figured out. And gradually, this is why we see all those amendments coming to the House, because as time progresses, as things change, as the science tells us, as the CMO recommends, the expert advisors, as they recommend, we come back to the House and make these amendments. Now, Mr. President, I just wanted, before I close, to make a very small appeal to our young people, because as I mentioned earlier, the greater population that is being affected, the greatest population that is being affected is our young people. It was only this morning I learned of the passing of a 25-year-old. She died to COVID-19. Young people, we are part of a very inquisitive generation. We like to use our phones for everything. We want to research everything. You have a headache, you Google. Your toe hurting you, you Google. Let us make informed decisions when we pick up our phones and we see all of this propaganda come through our phones. Let us think about it. And if we are not entirely sure of what to do, go to the World Health Organization's website. Go to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Visit the Ministry of Health's Facebook and government pages to get the accurate information. Because what we are seeing is a lot of misinformation out there, Mr. President. And that is why I want to make a very strong appeal to our young people. Excuse me. We would all like to revert to what we considered normal at the time. And it is a year and a half we have been dealing with COVID-19. If we look as far back as March 2020, we have made some strides and we've gone back some. We have taken a couple steps forward and we've gone back some. The only way for us to completely be rid of this virus is if we vaccinate. If you have any concerns, please consult your physician. Mr. President, through you, I just wanted to say those things because I realize that more and more young people, we are taking this matter very lightly. It is not a very light situation. I have a family member who recently passed from COVID-19. He was a bus driver. He did not take the vaccine. There are other people that I know with family and friends and persons who are close to them who did not take the vaccine. Now, I'm not saying that we can totally control every single thing that can happen, but as much as we can and as best as we can, let us try to put a handle on minimizing our risk. The data is clear. 100% of the persons who have contracted COVID-19 and passed away did not vaccinate. Fortunately for us, we are not overflowing. Our hospital beds are not overflowing. We are not at full capacity. But we can very well get there very soon if we do not take the measures and be responsible enough to play our part in fighting this deadly virus. My family, I have a family member who shared with me, she is in Martinique, that there's a family that she used to babysit or take care of the children. The children went to school. Apparently they came home, they had COVID-19, they lived with the grandparents and the parents. The grandparents died first, then the parents, and then the children. And that is the state of a country that is just 30 to 45 minutes away from us. We have not seen such devastating levels in St. Lucia, Mr. President, but if we do not practice what is right and practice the protocols and follow the necessary guidelines that are before us, we may very well get there. So I just wanted to stand and of course address the concerns of the members opposite and just leave this final admonition with our fellow St. Lucian members. And again, I want to echo the sentiments of the independent senators who said that even if you are vaccinated, it does not mean that you can go around the place with no mask. And especially if you are aware that you have COVID-19, that you need to social distance and practice the protocols. So again, Mr. Speaker, I've said as much as I could on this, and I just hope that our St. Lucian brothers and sisters take heed. We got some good news that double the number of persons from last month have received the vaccine. I think that's a very good stride to learn that 75% of our persons in the hospitality sector have been vaccinated. I mean, that is even more impressive, and it just says to me that people are doing the necessary research. They are learning again to trust the government. They are learning again to trust our leaders, and with that I encourage everybody as best as you can to encourage the person next to you, or your family, your brother, your sister, anybody that you come in contact with, to vaccinate. Thank you.